This is Blacklisted Radio. It's the third day of May 2014. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You can join me live Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Saturday morning. Usually, the internets are working. Technology allows. Bill Gates and the NSA find it to be okay. We get this thing launched right around 10 a.m. anyway. You can follow me on Twitter, BLN Radio. That's the place to do that. And, of course, the crew hanging out, chatting live every Saturday morning and other times as well at blacklistedradio.com. A lot to get into as per usual. I want to thank Craig Simpson. We're going to be testing out a new notes system that is going to make this show somewhat organized. We've got blood and treasure, ridiculous politics. We've got the Ukraine to talk about. Things are definitely heating up in the Ukraine, and it's going to be the focus of the beginning of this show. By the way, if you want to chime in, if you have things that you want to make part of the broadcast, you can text us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 512-222-3067 is the number. Or you can just leave us voicemails as well. And a lot of ways to contact the show, primarily on Twitter, though. So the Ukraine has reinstated conscription as the crisis deepens. This is pretty desperate. Besides the billions of dollars, at least $3 billion initially, and a lot of money that rides on the continuity of the Ukrainian state. The IMF's only giving this big loan. If you haven't heard about it, you're paying $1 billion, U.S. taxpayers. The rest of the people will be taxed, and who knows in the aggregate what this will really create or cost at the end of the day. Who knows? Who knows what the war in Ukraine, the civil war, the proxy war that is playing out today that I think most people would like to see de-escalate. Well, conscription. This is bad. This means that the acting president, unelected president, Alexander Turchynov, I think is how you say his name, something like that, has reinstated military conscription to deal with the deteriorating security in the east of the country, notably the fact that the paid-for voluntary Ukrainian military is just not really that interested in shooting Russian ideologue, Russian-speaking Ukrainians. You know, they see it for what it is, and there's no real legitimacy in the current government, and there's no guarantees that your loyalty to the current coup government will be fruitful. At any point, this thing can go completely 180. Who knows next month who will be in charge of the government? The U.S. is betting, and the world, the New World Order, the institutions, the Atlantic Council, the Trilateralist Commission, and all of the other groups that have really worked in the Caucasus and other Russian border states to kind of foment this encirclement of Russia, admittedly. And so not to go back into all of the geopolitics that led to this, but the fact that you have conscription really says a lot about how desperate the times are. And this, in and of itself, is so polarizing. Okay, if you're average Ukrainian, you have to really start thinking about how much you like this government in Kiev. Is this going to, I don't know, get you killed? Are you going to be sent to the front lines? And do you have the nationalistic viewpoint and mindset to support this government? I mean, just imagine if, I don't know, let's say Russia had come over to the United States, given a bunch of protesters. I mean, just think about this. I mean, it's kind of a far out scenario, but they've spent billions of dollars with Gazprom and Rosneft and TDK and the Chinese to, I don't know, support the Black Bloc anarchists or some other group that end up, and a couple bankers. Of course, you need some bankers. So J.P. Morgan, I don't know, maybe the Remington family, some other groups, some Vanderbilts, a couple Rockefellers, put together a government with the Chinese, and they basically storm the castle. They take over the White House. They occupy with a bunch of non-military insignia thugs, some region, or maybe the Congress. Let's think about that. Yeah, that's the Congress or the Senate. They've occupied these buildings, and all of a sudden, this is the duly elected government. So the war of words we're going to talk about, but just this whole idea that you're going to get the Ukrainian people to buy in. And I doubt that they're going to get very many people that are willing. And I don't know how much money it's going to take to institute government conscription, but it just seems like a really stupid idea. Really, really, really stupid idea. And right here in our own country, Obama, amongst many others, Joe Biden, they're trying to sell this. John Kerry is in, he's away from the yacht. He is definitely, I think, a little bit more invested than some, and this is kind of his legacy. He really does see himself as this world leader, an extension of the White House, and has delusions of grandeur. And I mean, I talk about disconnected often. How disconnected are these people from the actual shit that they're selling to what's actually happening on the ground? How much of it do they even realize is happening? I don't know. I mean, here's a fine example. Here is Obama, okay? And this is quite a flub. Let's see. I won't give it away. I'll tease it. Tell me what you think the problem with this 22 seconds of audio actually is.
But what they cannot accept, understandably, is the notion that they are simply an appendage, an extension of Russia, and that the Kremlin has veto power over decisions made by a duly elected government in Kiev.
Duly elected government in Kiev. Man, I mean, are you totally out to lunch? There has been no elections as of yet. This is an interim government installed by the State Department and I would say Chevron, other benefactors, friends of Victoria Nuland, academics, the World Bank, the IMF that are putting together and positioning loans for these companies. I mean, it's the financialization and weaponization of foreign policy. And this guy's just selling it. And nobody in the press corps. I mean, there's literally 500 people there with microphones that can ask him a question. And nobody noticed that the Kiev government is not duly elected. It's just one of these little side notes, one of these little problems. Well, anyway, the U.S. State Department Propaganda Office is active. Things are definitely ramping up in the information war, if you will. RT is being lambasted by John Kerry personally, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me because you're really giving them more advertising. You're really, I think, turning on the dials. You're turning people to RT. Kind of scary, though, in this age with I think really a desperate Western position in the financial world, in the military world. Not to say that we don't have the best weapons in the world. We really do. It's one of the big X factors, as I call it, in what happens moving forward. But, I mean, they're just selling crap down the river. They're selling people down the river, and I don't know how much of the plot they really even understand. I mean, these are talking points. People put these together. Ben Rhodes, his brother. We talked about David Rhodes last week. Policy decisions, the whole Benghazi Gate thing blowing up, which one of the real big takeaways that they are now denying, at least even, I mean, this shows you the power of the global media. Der Spiegel put out an article last week highlighting that the Ukraine is being used as a proxy to steer weapons, anti-aircraft weapons, MPADs, who knows what, RPGs, things that we would consider to be weapons of mass destruction in the hands of Al-Qaeda. We are giving to Al-Qaeda because we hate Bashar al-Assad, because this is a grand plan that has just kind of started to stall. And Russia at every turn has been there, I think, stymieing the New World Order, whether it's the gas attacks by the Assad regime, offering to help them get rid of and dismantle their armament program, their weapons, biological weapons program, and the like. All of these things that Russia has done over the last few months, couple of years really, has countered this Western hegemony. And quite frankly, it just pisses them off. You know, when people are trying to academically, I want to give Charlie McGrath all of the credit. He went on RT and academically debated the hypocrisy of Voice of Russia versus Voice of America, the two perspectives, the, as they call it, Putinist delusional fantasy that RT is propagating. He actually looked at it with a little bit more, I would say, academic reasoning than I would. I mean, it's really simple, people. They don't like what the Russians are doing. The Russians are screwing up the plan. The Russians are the target. They have been. That's why Zbigniew Brzezinski, I mean, we've been radicalizing, creating terrorists for 40 effing years to go after Russia. Well, I don't know how well it's working, but we're getting a lot of weapons to people. We're weaponizing the world. The Blood and Treasure segment is going to be telling, but NATO's second in command says Russia is now an enemy, not a partner. More war on words. And this came out just yesterday. The NATO Deputy Secretary General Alexander Vershbow, nice name, now says that the Allied group has been compelled to treat Russia as, quote, as more of an enemy than a partner, end quote, according to the AP. Take it for what it's worth. But the propaganda war has become so evident that they have to reel it in. So this kind of points to the new Cold War, and I think it's kind of a very, very foreboding example of what may be to come when you have to get everybody in line with the message. And that's what the Obama administration is failing at. That's what the West is failing at, maintaining the message. Bill Clinton, this came out last week in some of the memos and papers released. He said that the internet back in 1995 was something that was going to promote conspiracy theories because people on the internet immediately were looking at him and, you know, his accolades to creating a new world order, George Bush's parallel politics and the like, and he saw that as a very, very dangerous and concerning trend. That crazy conspiracy theorists, just like yourselves out there, that may actually hold these people at their words. You're actually paying attention to what they're saying, not who they're having sex with. You're actually listening to the propaganda and with a skeptic's view. Obviously, you should have one because these people are all about themselves. I mean, how could they not be? I mean, that's why I think it's kind of silly to not really hold these people more accountable. Because some people think that there's this altruistic guiding principle that is behind policy and world organizations. And it's really not. It's just a bunch of greedy people that want to put cookies in their own jar. So NATO countries are now planning the PSYOPs mission in Ukraine with troops and trainers on the ground. I like the word trainer because it's really a CIA spook. It's really somebody who is vetting somebody on the ground and who to give weapons to. So they're advocating for giving the Ukrainians more and more weapons to fight the Russians on the ground, to quote-unquote secure and use. The very hypocrisy of all of this is that we are giving the current coup government that we are completely behind and completely support, and we've paid for all of this along with the corporate benefactors. We're giving them weapons, okay, because we know, and if you've been listening to this podcast for any amount of time, things always come to fruition. Whenever they're saying that they're going to be giving weapons, or maybe we should be giving weapons, or wouldn't it be a great idea to give weapons to X or Y group, whoever it is? They're already doing it. We always find out, well, you know, now that we've sold it and the Congress voted on it, or the American people have been polled by Rasmussen, and now we all buy into it, that it's okay. It's part of consensus. It's case law. It's fine. We've been using this precedent for a long time. Secret interpretations of laws that we wrote in secret that the Congress didn't get to vote on. I mean, shit like that. Shit that just points to the fact that we have a completely rogue government with this fake facade of actors and buddies of George Clooney and Sarah Jessica Parker that are selling shit to the American people and the people of the world. The people of the world aren't so caught up and starstruck by celebrity that they are, well, maybe at least not U.S. celebrity, so much that they're buying into it because they're losing on the ground. The Ukrainian people, I mean, you're going to have a lot of psyops. You're going to have a lot of Voice of America to get people to buy into what's happening there because ultimately it's all about the bottom line. Okay, I don't care how much you love Yatsenyuk or the current president or Yulia, the crazy gas princess chick that looks like Princess Leia. I don't care how much you like those people. Or my favorite, Darth Vader, who is running to be the king of Ukraine or what's left of this Balkanized region. I mean, you're not going to buy into it, any of that shit, if you've got to pay 3 times as much for gas. If you don't have a job or you're working for next to nothing because now your factory is competing in the World Trade Organization, you're not going to buy into any of those solutions. And it's really, 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 really hard to hide the fact that there's U.S. companies all over the place doing business. And that's what we're providing, is security for these countries that have already bought in. I mean, that's how the IMF and the World Bank plan on being paid back, or other investors like the United States. So the U.S. Navy, the USN's own website, basically lays out the mission here. The West, an editor's note, this came from the Phantom Report, the West and East are heavily involved in psychological and disinformation warfare. John Kerry trying to get you to believe that RT is so much more propagandistic than CNN or MSNBC or any other GE syndicate corporation that's running your news, that's running your TV. I mean, it's a hard sell in this day and age. It's a real hard sell. You know, now I think back to it, Bill Clinton was right. He absolutely was right. So kudos to all of you out there that brought that to fruition. The conspiracy theories being right over and over again. It's scientific. If you are somebody that is considered to be a quote-unquote conspiracy theorist, 80% of the time, you're right. The other 20% of the time, you're waiting for CIA documents to be declassified to prove that you're right. So anyway, he notes that, says NATO allies are active in Ukraine by means of covert sabotage, aiding underground units, subversive tactics, counterintelligence, regime change, mercenary units, revolutionary activities. It's just another day at the office for the State Department. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. NATO countries may be ramping up the war of words in the coming weeks in Ukraine, where Russian propaganda flows freely into the east, while ill-prepared security forces can't even talk to one another. Communications problems. I mean, you know, they're all on walkie-talkies and really antiquated stuff. It's just, you know, easy for the Russians to listen into everything. Not that the Russians are all that high-tech, but they've got a lot better technology than the Ukrainians by far, by large. At least today. Who knows? And who knows what they've been given. Like I said, most of the time when we hear about these stories, this stuff has already happened 3 months ago. It says, quote, we are starting some projects together with others, understanding the time factor is of the essence, says Janis Starts, Latvia's State Secretary of Defense and second highest ranking official at the ministry. So Latvia and other regional benefactors, other NATO cronies are getting involved. This is the multipolar approach where we saw with Libya, Barack Obama didn't go to the U.S. Congress to get approval to the tactical strikes, and they had some other newspeak, Orwellian garbage terms to try to, you know, minimize legal culpability, as always, as per usual. So anyway, they're talking about this psychological backing and what they're doing. NATO countries may be ramping up the war of words. Multiple officials who spoke on a condition of anonymity with U.S. News says they are planning. The planning is underway to bolster the Ukrainian government's ability to communicate among its security services and broadcast to the general public. Do not be alarmed. You are part of the state. We love you. We love you. Do not resist. Do not resist. Slaves. You have a cash net worth of 9 million rubles now that you have entered the New World Order. We will not kill you. Get into the black vans. Who knows? Who knows what will be broadcast by the USN, but I wonder. Anyway, just another note on how the U.S. government is losing the war of words. It's pretty sad. Obama complains that TPP critics are conspiracy theorists who lack, quote, knowledge about TPP. You're a bunch of idiot conspiracy theorists because you don't trust Barack Obama and the government's secret negotiations that we only found out about after a couple of the Asian companies, or excuse me, yeah, they might as well be, Freudian slip, countries, high-level corporate executives, part of the fascist cabal, the low-level players, released these documents highlighting what TPP is all about. Basically, it changes. This is the most scary aspect of TPP besides all of the other stuff. The one that would pertain mostly to this show, mostly to the alternative media and your ability to disseminate information on the internet amongst one another, is that right now, if the government or a corporation thinks that your blog has something that's copywritten, it's upon them to notify you and to tell you that, hey, if you don't take it down, we're going to sue your ass. It's incumbent upon them to do that. What they want to change it to is that whenever you are in violation, the complete legal power is on the end of the copyright holder, MPAA, working with Blackwater. That's not a joke. It's true. They do have guns on the ground. The militarization of just about every federal agency and other quasi-agency, it's remarkable. I mean, they're giving assault rifles to the people at the FCC. What if you're broadcasting a message that's counter to the U.S. message? Hello. We're here from the government. We're here to help. We're here to help. We noticed that you had an antenna in your backyard. It's happened to people that I know. So anyway, the point should be that the rumors, conspiracy theories, political aggravation, and other issues should be completely forgotten. All those things that Obama, I mean, they're talking to conspiracy theorists. This is pretty telling. A lot of this, I mean, they're very worried about people like myself. So they would love to use these new laws, TPP, as a way to stamp out conspiracy theories. So that's the double entendre of what he's saying here. Okay, what he's really trying to do is stamp out the ability for individual artists to be able to build upon other works, to create a Gestapo to go after groups or individuals or websites if the movie houses, if the 6 huge mega syndicate corporations think that you have stolen something from them in some form or fashion. Disney, ESPN chasing you down for daring to use a word like March Madness. Can't say March Madness. We own March Madness. Well, we made it through March. We're in May. We're past May Day. So we're ahead of the game here. But and this thing's falling to pieces, thank goodness. But the government secrecy itself has only lent more firepower to quote-unquote conspiracy theorists and people like myself and you that see through this crap. Okay, the fact that they're saying nothing proves that they're doing something that you don't want. Because if they were doing anything that they could sell to you, they would be more than happy to tell you all about it. You know, they find a real terrorist. Well, usually when they find a real terrorist, they don't talk about it. It's a bad example. Let's say they have I don't know, some proof, a statistic, some scientific example of why they need more control, they will beat you down with it. They will take a dead horse and beat the other dead horse with that. They will bombard you with it. They will weaponize the information and shove it down your throat. When they say nothing, that's scary. It's like little kids. When you don't hear them, you're like, oh man, they're doing something bad. Same thing with government. Government are just like children. Great metaphor. Perfect. So anyway, what happens when diplomacy fails? What happens when conspiracy theories rule the day and are messing up all of the New World Order's plans? Well, it's time to blow up stuff. Time to blow up stuff. Some interesting takeaways from what has happened in Russia, the new sanctions. SpaceX is entering the arms race. If you're not familiar with SpaceX, it's a pretty interesting group. Oh, I messed up on my notes here. I didn't finish them. Got wrapped up. That's all right. Let's see. SpaceX will be allowed to compete for military contracts. So who is it? Who are they? SpaceX won an injunction just the other day. This is some of the legal military might that's happening with Russia in the background. SpaceX won an injunction against the United States Air Force yesterday, just 2 days after filing the suit. The decision temporarily prohibits the military from buying rockets made with Russian parts. You may have heard of this, giving SpaceX time to jump into the military launch sector. Last week, SpaceX founder Elon Musk, Tesla, filed an injunction against the U.S. Air Force and the United Military Launch Alliance, a Boeing Lockheed Martin conglomerate, last week, saying the $70 billion contract the USAF signed with ULA earlier this year violates both U.S. sanctions and against Russia. So basically, SpaceX is a private company. They've been building rockets. They are part of the military-industrial complex, and now they're finding new ways, new money. A lot of people think, oh well, it's so green to buy a Tesla. Well, you look at other stuff that Elon Musk is involved in, and it's the weaponization of the world. A lot of money to be made, and it kind of shows you the political action or the politicization of these big, huge moves in the market, especially with weaponry. So, Elon Musk stands to make a lot of money with these sanctions. Now, once these sanctions are benefiting you and your multi-billion-dollar corporation, then you start becoming vested in the hand. And that's what's so sick about all of this. This is what people don't get. Not you out there, but the general public. That now Elon Musk, the Tesla Corporation, they have a hand in what is happening in Ukraine. It becomes a poker game where literally these guys now have a hand. Now, how invested in the round, the game, are they? How many and how great is their hand? They look at that. When it gets above a few $1 billion, there's a lot of forethought that goes into these contracts and the money to be made. $70 billion. I mean, outside of government, you're hard pressed to find a $70 billion deal. So this is what the U.S. is doing in lieu of having good economic policy, financial stability, a well-educated and employed populace. You just build lots and lots and lots of bombs. So that's happening. Japan is now entering the arms market as well. They're buying 42 of Lockheed Martin's Joint Strike Fighters. Japan aims to become this large supplier. The F-35. This is kind of funny, though. There's some ironic takeaways from this. The F-35 is plagued with problems. It's not stealth. Okay? It doesn't do very well. The cost of production is so far off of what they originally thought it would be, just to bring the initial buy to sale or to the countries that have invested. You're talking about $1 trillion, not to mention maintenance and fuel and all the other things, and the bombs that you attach that you have to buy that are proprietary. I mean, it's quite the racket. But when you're in the business of killing people, man, I mean, there's a lot of money to be made in that security. So, of course, Japan wants to sell weapons to all of its allies, all the people in the region, the way to pivot towards Asia and to arm Asian allies. The U.S. and the Philippines signing somewhat sketchy deals for more military aid and weaponry. And that's what Russia and the United States does very well. That is, selling weapons to allies. It only makes sense. It only makes sense that you would weaponize all of the people that are benefiting you, and you hope that by giving them power over their people, that gives you power over them. Although Boeing and some of these companies are, losing a lot of the market presence to China, Brazil is going with Chinese weapons due to the allegedly due to, or ostensibly probably is a better way to identify it or to name it, due to the NSA leaks from Edward Snowden. That's why they don't trust the Boeing Corporation, nor should you. I mean, if you're buying weapons, you'd sure hate for the U.S. to be able to turn them off. I mean, it's just kind of common sense that that's not something that you would want to happen. And now, looking at the technology that we have today, and what's happening with it, people are not thrilled with this idea. Here's one that I saw this morning that really signifies where people are at and how I think almost emphatically disagree with what government is doing and distrust the U.S. government. Threats against Maryland gun dealer raise doubts about the future of smart guns. We've all heard about smart guns. People are scared of them. Eric Holder's tried to sell you on them. So I don't blame you for being skeptical. I'm skeptical. Dealing with high-tech weaponry, anything that is too technically, developmental, too initial, is not going to work very well. So that's really my big problem with smart guns. If you want to buy a smart gun, I mean, it's really on you, right? I mean, what you're buying is none of my business. So anyway, the latest skirmish over the nation's first smart gun, which, who knows if this thing is going to work very well? Who knows if it's going to actually fire when you need it? When you need a gun, who knows how that situation is going to play out? I mean, the idea that you're always going to be wearing your gun wrist bracelet, or this thing's going to work, that to me, fundamentally, it just makes it sound like it's less apt to be as reliable. The reliability factor goes to near zero with me. I wouldn't feel confident that if I just leave this thing in a drawer for 2 years and a burglar runs through my front door, or whoever it may be, that I'm going to be able to grab it and shoot them in the face, which is what I would like to do, maybe, possibly, depending on the situation. Can you trust a smart gun? Well, anyway, people get pretty excited about what this means, and ultimately see this as the slippery slope towards government-regulated guns at every level, and basically the ability for the government to turn off your guns. I mean, that's what it comes down to. They can hit a satellite and send a signal to your firearm, deactivating it. Maybe you have a criminal background, or you give it to someone else. It might tattle on you. It might start sending some distress alert signals to your local ministry of police. So those are the obvious and very rational concerns that average Americans are having. So anyway, this guy who has a gun shop in Maryland has been receiving death threats, allegedly, against him, this gun dealer who wanted to sell the weapon, has raised doubts about the future of the prompted some gun control advocates to back away from legislative efforts to mandate the technology. And they should not mandate the technology. That's why people are so upset about this. It's a great way to keep the guns off the market. It just shows you how idiotic people in government are. Because you would sell this for all the right reasons, and you wouldn't even talk about mandates if you wanted to do it in the future. So thank you, government, for being incompetent. Thank you for really buying into your own BS so much so that you can't stop talking about it. It's like Dianne Feinstein. I mean, she hangs herself with her own words because it's not just that we should look at some of the statistics and there's too much gun crime and we need to find a solution. You could sell that all day long, but once they start pontificating, talking about, well, you don't want these people to have guns, and blah, blah. I mean, they completely out themselves because they're so proud of it. I mean, Margaret Sanger, perfect example. She was a eugenicist. Couldn't stop talking about needing to kill black people in a day where there was very little information that was directed to the people that would be receiving her services. They would have known now, but back then had no idea. But she was just so over the top about her ideas. So one mad person to another here. I think when there's plenty of those in Washington. So anyway, Engagement Armament, Rockville gun shop endured an outpouring of vitriol from gun rights advocates who fear the technology will be used to curtail their Second Amendment rights by eliminating the kinds of guns they can buy in the future. But the thing is that this is misdirected anger at this gentleman who's just trying to bring a product to market that he thinks may have a potential market, a demographic. I could see a lot of women buying into a smart gun. Okay, this is something that I can buy, that I can protect myself with, but I don't have to worry about the moral issues that I have because I know that somebody's not going to rob me and take this gun and use it against me. People get scared by statistics saying, well, you're more likely to be shot by your own gun than you are by a burglar. The problem with that is that it paints this picture that, lo and behold, most people that have guns are idiots and somehow they get turned back on you. You pull out the gun. This guy, he's a ninja. He grabs your gun. He shoots you with it. What skews that number is the amount of spouses that they take that gun and shoot their own husband or wife when they are sleeping or in some other compromised position or some other family member. So that completely skews this idea that, burglars are running around and turning them on you or stealing your gun and then shooting you with it. But that's the picture that they paint because it's just the best pitch that they have. It's skewed vision. It's, telling you the story with blinders on. All right. So anyway, not long ago, smart guns, personalized weapons that only fired for authorized users were seen in the movies. Today, after millions of dollars and more than 10 years of research, they are finally smart guns for the public. And so to me, I don't see that as being a problem. And if people want smart guns, this would be my argument. This would put more responsible, law-abiding adults into the market, possibly for buying a gun. So do you want those people to be gun lovers? I don't know. Do you want them to sign up for the NRA and become part of the lobby effort? Don't get me going on that. I don't know. But I do think that, people kill the messenger. People are upset with technology. It's just like RFID. People see that as a way to chip your body. The technology that they have today far surpasses chipping you. But I still see stories all the time in the alt media talking about the microchipped enslaved population. It's okay, I get it, but with the technology, the biometric access, vein readers, retinal readers, fingerprint readers, there's 1,000 other ways that they can identify and track everyone ultimately. And that's not to say that the 90% of the people in this country don't have a cell phone and take it with them anyway. That's the number one way that they go after drug dealers. The state finds people that they want and put them in prison. And now with your car in 2014, I think it's now mandated that this thing has an onboard black box recording an event recorder. And at some point, there's going to be a USB port on your car mandated by the state where the government can say, well, let me just plug on in there. Yep, it says you're doing 72 miles an hour in the 70. I'm going to have to go ahead and fine you. Yep, we've got the whole recording of everything you said. So we're not too far away from that because the technology exists. The only thing that stops that from becoming reality are angry consumers. And so maybe, just maybe, this guy being so attacked for it might end up being a way to really nip this thing in the bud and scare manufacturers away from it. Though I don't advocate going out and terrorizing and threatening people that, gun shop dealers just trying to make a buck. Don't go after those people. Let's see. I want to talk about some of the ridiculous things that I've seen in politics today. They've just really, 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 I think, highlighted to me that the mission is failing. Here you go. Here's some of the stuff that people that I don't know how many millions of Americans really adore this lady, but I mean, saying things that are just this crazy. Normally, you would think, okay, we live in the times of Rome. We live in some crazy despot. But no, this woman's getting love all over the media, and I don't know. I mean, if you could say this with any kind of sincerity, then you are, I don't know, maybe you just think that you're speaking to that base. People are excited about it, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I think it's disgusting. But I think that people that Sarah Palin talks to probably appreciate these little jokes.
Waterboarding is how we baptize terrorists.
Yay. Yes, yay. So you have that. You have this lady. She's on a tirade. She's all over the papers. Just wanted married. She said Jesus fought for death penalty until he died. She's turning into Ann Coulter. Becoming this media darling, just saying the most retarded bullshit, and people are eating it up. I guess we're in the run up to 2016. We're in the run up to primaries and other elections, and so it's that season again. It's time to get out there and vote for some of these idiots, some of these charlatans, these hooker prostitute politicians like Sarah Palin. And, I mean, I enjoy it because it gives us, little sound bites for the soundboard here that we can play for you whenever we get bored. We're like, oh, yeah.
Waterboarding is how we baptize terrorists.
All day long, because that becomes really the debate in this country. That is where politics is today. That's why only crazy conspiracy theorists like all of us here would dare talk about things outside of this norm. So, business as usual. I do want to talk about the fact that Russia is pushing BRIC nations to establish their own rating agency. This came out from Russia Beyond the Headlines. When we know that they want to create an investment group, which I don't think would be a great idea looking at the IMF, but they do want to create this cooperative, and I don't blame them. I mean, they see the institutions that are being used to encircle the countries, the BRIC nations. Mind you, the BRIC nations, this cooperative was brought to you by Goldman Sachs. Just note that. Regardless, the BRICS are getting pushed by Mr. Putin to create their own rating agency, and that's because we've seen the weaponization of money in this country and the weapons of mass debt destruction coming from the rating agencies. To keep your economy going in this modern world, you need lots of free cash. Not you and I. We don't get the free cash. We don't even get the cheap cash. We don't get the interest-free or loan-bearing assets from any of these groups. We don't get any of those things. But the governments and the friends of the fascist cabal in Washington, they get cheap money. Commercial banks, they get cheap money, practically free money. So that is pretty powerful. I mean, you can invest in people that are friends and invest in what you want to see happen. It's very, very simple. Okay, if I had millions of dollars, you can only imagine how I would invest it to live in a world where we have a better, more informed public, to see a return to humanity. I don't know. I could do a lot of things that probably wouldn't pay huge dividends in the world we live in, but I think there would be a very powerful counter to what we have today, and that would be very dangerous to those that benefit from it. So, the Russian countries, the BRIC nations, rather, Brazil, Russia, India, China, they see this policy, the policy of money and printing debt, and they like it. So Russia is to propose this to the BRIC partners to establish a single common credit rating agency that will compete with the big three, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch. That was the conclusion reached by participants of a meeting chaired by Russia's first Deputy Prime Minister, Igor Shuvalov, after Standard & Poor's downgraded Russia's long-term foreign currency sovereign rating to BBB negative. And this is what it's all about. Well, I'll show you. This is the exact tactic the U.S. government did when Standard & Poor's downgraded U.S. debt. They're like, oh, yeah, well, we're just going to indict a bunch of you people over here. It's pretty simple. We think this is bullcrap. We're going to indict you. This has to be illegal. It has to be unconscionable. So Vladimir Putin obviously wants the same power, but you've seen it with Visa and MasterCard as well, turning their tails and leaving the Russian market due to sanctions. Vladimir Putin said himself, he said, look, we need our own credit card companies. We need our own financial industries to do these things. We tried to let Western business in, and they don't want the money. Now, I think that this is going to be really I think this is going to be the hardest thing for people that have been investing in the corporate New World Order, the Fortune 500s, to stomach. That is, they've used internationalism and global profits being made by these companies as a way to get countries to invest in the New World Order, if you will. Getting them to say, well, we're so financially vested in what's happening today, and these companies are making so much money for our government and the people, the cronies, that we just can't go to war. It's just too good. The money's too good. So this all is running counter and rivals what has happened. So the biggest losers in this, besides the American people, obviously, are the companies that are not allowed to do business in Russia anymore. I mean, talk about rocket manufacturers. Talk about the Boeing company. They're losing $40 to $70 billion contracts for weapons. And that's all that's left. I mean, that's where the big money is at, and that is in the military-industrial complex. And let me tell you, when you have the world on the edge of war, you just have more and more debt being created by governments. So I think a lot of this might even actually be just a huge ruse to get more weapons to the rest of our benefactors and friends and to move to a single polar world, literally, or at least a bipolar world, and then moving more towards a singular world. I don't know how much of this I even buy between so many of these financial benefactors and what's happening in the Ukraine. I would even go as far as to say that when you look at how much money is being made in Russia, what this is doing for Russia, which is great, it is great. More and more countries are buying into the Russian model. They're worried about their own safety. That's what governments do. They sell safety. They sell debt. And now they are getting huge weapons contracts with Iran. A lot of the things that were off the table are now on the table. Huge weapons contracts with China, namely the S-400 missile defense deal. Okay, now you have the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in multi-level drills. The Chinese are on the ground in Russia training and working towards more policies that are benefacting them. The Russians are also opening up a railway to North Korea, to Crazy Land, where everybody's a slave. So they're making a lot of money in opening up a lot of new pathways that without all of this international pressure, people just say, well, why? We don't need to do it. There's not that much profit. There absolutely is when there's something that's an impending snafu, an impending I think when the danger level's higher, the risk and the reward, the blood and the treasure are much higher. I mean, it's now a national security issue to create these economic corridors, to reopen the Silk Road, to create these transnational pipelines and railways, to be able to transfer energy and products to new places, to keep these routes protected. You got it. All those things now bring the bottom dollar up much higher, and this allows governments under the guise of terror. You got terror in China, you got terror in Russia, you got terror everywhere. They can borrow a lot more money, and they can get the people to buy into it. Look, we got terrorism everywhere. Look how crazy the world is. Look what Russia's doing. Look at the propaganda. Oh, my God, people. Okay? It's World War II all over again. Well, and what happened during World War II? We saw one of the biggest economic boosts ever. So as I started the podcast, I said, well, for lack of good policy, we may have war, and looking at how much it benefits all of these countries. I mean, a lot of people see this as like, oh, poor Russia. They're getting the raw end of this deal. I look at Russia and I think, wow, this is a lot of new business partners. This is a lot of pressure on the U.S. This is a lot of new business partners for the U.S. in the Asian pivot. I mean, there's a lot of money being made here. So, some people look at war as the tragedy that it is, the human blood ritual sacrifice that it always becomes, and say, well, damn, that's horrible. That is some horrible stuff right there. Death, mayhem, genocide. But there's a lot of people in this world that say, man, that's a lot of money. Ooh, that's good stuff. Invest in evil, 2014. There's those people out there. I'm not one of which, and most of you are not either. And, the New World Order and the powers that be don't do themselves any favors by creating this complete divergence from economic stability and basically running over the population. That is usually what leads to more instability. That's usually what is the downfall of most prosperous nations and governments and systems and isms and ocracies. That is usually what tears them apart, all of the opolies, all of those things. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I hope that the people of Ukraine, I know this is how idealistic I am, but they themselves look to themselves for salvation rather than to Russia, rather than to the IMF, rather than to the U.S., because ultimately the only people in the Ukrainian equation that are going to be looking after the Ukrainians are the Ukrainians themselves. A lot of people want to back Russia on this and say, "Whoa, this is great." I guess I think that when you look at the horrific, unconstitutional, and in contrast to what your duly elected president, your duly elected black guy. We talk about how America's racist, and we elected a black guy. I don't understand that, but nonetheless, he said that the Kiev Ukrainian government is duly elected. People buy that. People think that's true. But at the end of the day, they're already screwing these people, and they're making them fight against their fellow countrymen. And I hope that brashness, that hubris, the idiocy of that policy is the undoing of the West's proxy war that's playing out. It is completely tragic. The U.S. should be ashamed of themselves. Chevron, you should be ashamed of yourselves. All of the investors in this war on the Ukrainian people, funding literal ethnic genocide, funding Nazis. They account for it. I hope that they are found guilty for war crimes eventually. Hopefully, at least in the history books. It's about what the historians themselves will write these records and show the John Kerrys and the other financial and economic terrorists of the world exactly what it is that is taking place in the Ukraine today and around the world. Hopefully, that is at least my idealistic version of what could play out. I think that it's a lot better than...
Waterboarding is how we baptize terrorists.
Yeah, people might buy into that. I know that you're listening to this podcast because you did not. No corporate sponsors, no commercials, no water filters, no virility pills, no nothing. It's just the brutal, honest truth brought to you by you. Please support us. Go to blacklistedradio.com and make a generous donation like Sarah and others that did for this week. Appreciate all of your support and hope to see you back here for another live edition of Blacklisted Radio. Until then, take care.